If that's the case, you're probably just settling for like a Michael Hoyt or something along the defense line.
I don't talk about him like that. Someone like a Michael Hoyt. Like he went to the dollar menu at McDonald's. That's what you talked about him.
Hey, brother, double stacked fish fillet hits.
I know. That gets you through.
I'm going to ask you a question here. This is going to determine our friendship moving forward. Did you ever take a chicken sandwich and a double cheeseburger from McDonald's, take away one of the buns, and put it together?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. You're still invited to the wedding.
Absolutely. Thank God.
It was on.
I'm really looking forward to it. So
I'll probably do that at my wedding, to be honest with you.
That's a legendary end of wedding midnight snack idea that maybe only the bros would really appreciate, but man.
Oh, my fiance would slam that.
Yeah, this isn't like a only men thing. I just wonder if like imagine like your elderly grandmother like hungry on the way out and you hand her McChicken and a McDouble.
Here you go,
Grandma. hope you're bulking.
Welcome to the opening bell of the NFL Stock Exchange podcast. I'm Trevor Sikkema, that is Connor Rogers, joining you for the final scheduled fixture franchise that we have here. Maybe we'll throw you a Tim Wakefield knuckleball in there at some point over the holiday month and give you an extra one. But as of right now, this is our last one. And I don't want to say, Connor, that we saved the best for last, but we truly saved this one because we needed to wait for it. We needed to wait for this time because we didn't know what Bryce Young was going to look like. We didn't know what Dave Canales was going to look like. And so much of that has to do with what we are going to do here, building the offseason for the Carolina Panthers. How you doing, my friend?
I'm good, man. It's nice to put a bow on this series with a team that if we did a fix-your franchise for them when we started the series, it would look so much different. And it goes to show you how you can kind of change the fortunes of a season and how to build on a following season. I think that's the fun and the beauty of the Panthers right now is that Bryce has given them hope and optimism. And that's probably helped the backing of Canales after a year. And we're not going to act like it was perfect this year for the Panthers, but things started to go right the second half of this year. And I think it certainly significantly changes the outlook of what they will do in the pro market of free agency and how they can attack their draft to hopefully supplement the continued growth of this quarterback.
And to be fair to us, we did do the fixing the franchise for the Panthers in like November of last year.
Yes.
So they were
that was the real reason. I want to be clear. When we started, we were like, well, we can't really do the Panthers because we started with them last year. But maybe we can do them third.
Like a month and a half ago, you're totally right. We looked at this franchise and we were like, oh no.
I know.
Are we about to try to tear this to the studs again?
Right.
And we don't have to. Yeah, because Bryce looks a lot better now. And obviously we'll get into the Bryce Young conversation. You know, when we've done Fix Your Franchise, the reason why I love this series so much is because, you know, teams can look very different. Certainly the ones that we were doing early on in the series this year, it's heavy focus on general manager candidates, head coaching candidates, a lot of changes within the front office and the coaching staff to sort of, you know, kickstart what you want to be a winning window or at least getting on the right track. For the Carolina Panthers, Dan Morgan is their general manager, and we'll sort of dig into that a little bit more. They just hired Dave Canales after firing Frank Reich after, you know, just a handful of games, 11 games. So it's not like they're going to move on from Dave Canales. Those guys are set. We're not moving on from those guys, but we get to devote some extra time to this roster. Talk about what building blocks we want to move around, what went well in 2024, what we could see continuing to move well in the future. So this is more of a roster building fixture franchise, which is a nice little change of pace and I think a good way to end this series here.
Yeah, this is what you hope for, right? Rather than being like, oh man, you know, are they going to get the right coach in here? You start to play the game of, would this guy go there? Is this guy a fit? What's the pairing with the GM, or can you move? There's so many variables when you have to go that route. So once in a while, it's nice to look at an NFL team and say, okay, we feel like they have the people in place at the top that deserve a real crack at this. Now they got to make the right decisions with the actual personnel and the product on the football field. And, you know, we're not going to sugarcoat this. The Panthers right now, they sit here at 3-11, but they have set this up where, you know, a couple of different moves in a division that is not the NFC North level of superpowers that they can get this. We really believe they can get this thing right.
Yep. So let's dig into it. We're getting right into it.
Draft capital helps, something they did not have last year.
Right. So they've got a little bit more draft capital, and as we often do, I probably didn't set the show up correctly, but as we often do, we will end this episode with a free agency plan and a Carolina-centric mock draft that we will do to sort of build an ideal team that we think could be very solid for them moving forward. But let's dig into this 3-11 season that they are currently on right now. Obviously, no playoff expectations for this team. They are once again fourth in the NFC South, but the world looks a lot brighter than it did, I would say, to start the season. So, last year, how do I put this nicely? It was a shit show for Carolina last year.
Yeah.
So they hire Frank Reich, and I liked the hire at the time, Connor. I really did. And I know that we talked about some of this with the Fix Your Franchise last year, so I'm not going to totally rehash it, but you do have to, once again, sort of talk about it to how Carolina got to this point. I liked the Frank Reich hire. I really did. Matt Rule, he wasn't going to work out in the NFL very clearly. How he wanted to do things, how he wanted to build an NFL team, it was not close enough to how he would have built a college program. And even at the time when Carolina hired him, it's like, all right, he was a program builder in multiple spots in college. Maybe he just understands the game and how it works, and it just didn't translate to the NFL level. So they go out and they get Frank Reich, and Reich, highly respected coach around the league. I thought that he did good things when he was the Indianapolis Colts head coach, but his time had sort of run its course. And funny enough, much like Doug Peterson with Jacksonville, I thought that Carolina just hit great timing, right? Where this guy was available. He's an offensive mind. He's a quarterback's coach. And you're picking number 1 overall, and you got your pick. They end up selecting Bryce Young, and, to be frank, didn't go well. Wow, full pun intended, I guess.
Nicely done there, buddy.
Yeah, there you go. Wow, I just...
When you land on one, sometimes you just really get it.
Connor, I really do. So, it was a real struggle. There was, all right, Frank Reich ends up giving offensive coordinator duties, he play calling duties to Thomas Brown at one point because it was going so bad, and then he took it back to kind of basically just fall on his own sword because he knew that things weren't going well. Were they 1-10 when he ends up getting fired 11 weeks into the season? 0-6 on the road, worst record in the NFL. It was bad, man. And Bryce Young looked bad. Bryce Young looked terrible last year.
He looked lost, which was more concerning than just being bad.
And the offensive line was horrendous in 2023. It really was. It was the number one talking point of what they have to do and how they have to be better for Bryce Young going into the next season. So amongst the changes in the coaching staff, what they also had to do was really retool that roster. So they've got Taylor Moton, Ike Ekwonu. They had those guys as offensive tackles. They bring in Damian Lewis. They bring in Robert Hunt. Spent a good chunk of change to really upgrade that offensive line. And the offensive line has played better. And then we get to 2024. So they hired Dave Canales, and we'll get into Dave Canales a little bit more into detail. But they hired Dave Canales 2 games into the season, regular season. You talk about Bryce Young looking lost last year. You look just as lost this year. And the problem was we were running out of excuses, right?
Right.
You had a new voice in his head. You had a new head coach. You had a new offensive philosophy. And most importantly, you had a lot better of an offensive line in front of you. This offensive line was playing well 2 weeks into the season. They go 0-2, and Bryce gets benched. And we did a podcast earlier back in September, covering Bryce Young when he got benched, and we didn't really know what the future held for him. And I think that that's crazy because both you and I loved Bryce Young. I had number one overall prospect that year. But for him to look as bad as he did in 2023 and as bad as he did at the beginning of 2024, I was worried. I was really worried about him. So they start Andy Dalton. They play Andy Dalton. They play decently well, but they sort of had a nice little spark when Andy Dalton came in, but then it got back to a little bit of regression to where Carolina, where they probably were going to be this year. Andy Dalton ends up getting hurt in a car accident of all things, and he's okay, obviously, but that puts Bryce Young back in the lineup, and Connor, he's looked great. He's had some really nice games. The best games of his NFL career have come since he has been the starter from week 9 on. From week 9 to week 13 even. There was a 4-game stretch where he had passing grades of 75.2, 68.5, 82.8, 79.2. I mean, we're talking about a legit NFL starting quarterback and the closest thing to Alabama version of Bryce Young that we have seen so far. And, we're doing this podcast after the Cowboys game, and admittedly, It was bad. The Cowboys game was really bad.
He sacked 6 times. Yeah.
But it was bad for everybody on
Right.
Carolina's offense, not just a Bryce Young issue. So here we sit recording this podcast, even after the Cowboys game, with them sitting at 3-11. I am very happy with Bryce Young and where he is right now. And I think that we're on the trajectory to where he could be a really, really good starting quarterback in this league. How do you feel about sort of his journey and where he's at now?
Much better now than obviously how things started this year. I, like you, full transparency, I had him as the number 1 quarterback. He was not my number 1 player. I think he was number 2. I know I had Will Anderson number 1. I mean, same point, right? And I understood the arguments between him and Stroud. Like, it was definitely close. I remember back to summer scouting, I had it flipped. I had it Stroud, then Bryce. And then by the time we got to the draft, I had it Bryce, then Stroud. And it's so interesting to see the trajectory of their careers, or even just like what they were placed into and what competence does for a young player. And with Bryce, like I said, year 1, it's one thing to look bad. It's another to look lost. And I think what we learned about Bryce a little bit is some guys can be in a bad situation, but they have so many physical gifts, or they could be struggling, but they have so many physical gifts that there's moments that keep them afloat. Mm-hmm. Anthony Richardson at times throughout his young career has had those moments. I think even when you look at when Lamar Jackson was really developing as a passer, he was such a gifted playmaker that he was still impacting the game while growing as a passer. Now he's just out of this world at everything. And the same can be said for Josh Allen. When you look at how Josh Allen started his career, Josh Allen was such a gifted athlete that he was using his running and playmaking to buy himself time to grow as a confident passer. Bryce didn't necessarily have the top tier physical gifts where he could have those moments. And that was so scary about year 1. Now, year 2, it's funny when he gets benched and then he comes back in and he starts to grow some confidence from playing more competently. Now you're starting to see the flashes, Trevor, of some playmaking ability, escaping, throwing on the run, not feeling like, oh God, here comes the rush. I have to stare at it and I don't know what to do. Just, it's crazy what confidence can do for a young player. And we've seen the change of confidence for him specifically. And they've invested a lot in him. And the fact that you have seen steps this year, I'd be floored if they don't try to continue to lift him up into year 3. It just feels like you made the decision. You've invested so much into him. You're finally seeing progress with the coach that you think is right for his development, the offensive line that you paid a lot of money to. And it's been ups and downs for Leggett. And now Leggett deserves to get the caveat that he needs wrist surgery after the season. So he's playing through a pretty significant injury. But I think they want a little bit more out of Leggett. They're going to have to get a premium pass catcher, maybe even in this draft. They're going to have to get a premium playmaker for Bryce as part of that setting him up for success. But I think it feels like we have the clear identity into the offseason that it's how do we put the best around Bryce so he goes from taking some steps last year to now it's 2025. We want to see the full-on growth in year 3. And I really do think that is on the personnel because in theory, he'll be more comfortable with the scheme, comfortable with the coach, comfortable behind this offensive line. Now it's having more playmaking talent to elevate him further.
Yeah, and they did a pretty decent job emphasizing that in last year's draft, right? Dan Morgan's first draft as the general manager of the Carolina Panthers. He was the assistant GM for 3 seasons prior to that, and then he was elevated to the president of football ops and general manager for 2024. In that draft, they take Xavier Leggett at 32 at the back end of the first round, like you mentioned. Jonathan Brooks as well, which sucks. I mean, Jonathan Brooks is my RB1 going into last year. Was a huge fan of Jonathan Brooks. I even loved the pick. Like, I really did, even with him coming off of injury. I thought it was interesting that they gave Chuba Hubbard the contract that they did, given the fact that they hadn't even really seen Jonathan Brooks yet. But very clearly, they just wanted to set up an offense where, you look around the league and there's a lot of really great running back duos or just rushing attacks. I mean, think of the Buffalo Bills, think of the Detroit Lions. Like, these teams that are just really great and have really good rushing attacks. Carolina wanted to be one of those teams. So they paid Chuba Hubbard the money. But Jonathan Brooks, even in the limited action that we saw from him this year, I thought he showed man, just the quick movements,
Right.
missed tackles forced. I mean, the decisiveness, the explosiveness, like it was there for him. And now he tore his ACL again. And so, I mean, now everything is up in the air for him. Not that he's not going to come back, but man, 2 ACL tears, it's really tough.
It's just a bummer.
Running back. Yeah, it sucks. There's no way around it. But, you know, they invest in the second round there. They go third round. They go Tevin Wallace, the linebacker from Kentucky, which I thought was an overdraft at the time, and we'll sort of get to some team building of why I think they ended up doing that. Could still work out for them, but I think it was quite a big of a risk for them to pick Tevin Wallace where they did in the third round. And then fourth round, Jatavian Sanders, who I think could be a really nice tight end in this league. And, you know, we'll get to the free agent point of things, but, you know, Tommy Tremble's probably on his way out, hasn't really showed what he has needed to here for this team. You're hoping that Jatavian Sanders can be the guy for you moving forward. And so Dan Morgan did a pretty good job emphasizing what he needed to last offseason. They brought in Damian Lewis and Robert Hunt. Okay, great. Check. Definitely need that.
Right.
You lose Brian Burns, so you got to go out and you got to go get yourself Jadeveon Clowney. So you get Jadeveon Clowney. The defense, they knew they were probably going to struggle. They lost a lot of guys on that defensive side of the football that were contributing football players. But when it comes to offense, they basically did everything that they could, I think. And when you look at Dave Canales, so he's the head coach. He was the quarterback's coach for the Seattle Seahawks back in 2020. Then he was the offensive coordinator for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, first-time play caller in 2023. Did some nice things with Baker Mayfield. Obviously did well enough for Baker Mayfield to earn that second contract and got the Bucs to the divisional round playing the Detroit Lions. And so that team actually played pretty dang well. And you could tell through the first half of that season that Canales was really learning how to be an offensive coordinator and really learn how to be a play caller. And then the second half of the season, you saw some better things from him, but with him as Carolina's head coach, I do think that he's still learning. However, I do want to point to some tangible improvements from head coach and offensive decisions from last year to this year. Last year, this Carolina team had a 50% red zone conversion percentage. This year, it's up to 56%. Last year, they had just 23 total touchdowns. This year already, they have 27. Last year, they gave up 240 pressures. This year, only 127, significantly better. I know they got a couple of games left, but just significantly better. That cannot be overstated. Only 46 plays of 15 yards or more in 2023. They now have 79 this year. So now they're closer to, I think it's right, that's right around like 25th, 26th in the league. So not the best, but certainly not dead last like it was last year. They were 30th in play action rate last year, only ran 118 plays with play action. This year, they already have 133, and that number is going to go up with 3 games left. Motion rate, they were 28th in the NFL with 207 plays with motion attached to them this year already at 224. They were 32nd in yards after catch last year. They're still only 31st this year. But so many of the ways, Connor, in which you would want to show offensive evolution to where the game is going, how to help out your young quarterback, how to make things a little bit more difficult on the defense. Just those little subtle ways that did not exist for Carolina last year exist now for them. And as they are figuring out their identity with Canales and Bryce as the tandem head coach and quarterback, I wanted to point out those numbers to say this team is certainly going in the right direction of where the game is going and how to be a better offense in this league.
I think it's a great point by you because it shows that they've made their offense not only more modern, but quarterback friendly, which was probably the biggest problem a lot of people had during the previous era is just how static things felt. I remember when we watched him and when we did the fix your franchise for them the first time, we were like, I don't think anyone stands a chance back there. Like, what happened here? Nobody stands a chance back there. So you're right. And it's hard to be a first-time head coach who is also has a key responsibility as a quarterback developer. Like Canales has so much on his plate as a head coach, and his priority number one is preparing the team and winning games. But he also has a priority 1A that not all head coaches in the league have, and that is being stapled next to a young quarterback that needs a lot of answers. Mm-hmm. And that is not easy to do. But the best coaches in the league often can do that. So I think Canales deserves a little grace this year. Not to mention, this is a team that, man, I know it's dangerous to look at luck in the NFL, but they've had some bad luck. I mean, you lose Derek Brown right out of the gate, who's the middle of your entire defense. You talk about Jonathan Brooks, Trevor, who I guess when they paid Chuba, their idea was to be one of these teams that the identity of their offense can be the backfield duo they have.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So it's like, okay, we're going to keep Chuba here, who has developed into a tougher runner than he was coming out. And we have Brooks, who we think in space, can he play the Jahmyr Gibbs role for us? Mm-hmm. And when you said, when you see flashes of Brooks in space, it's like, whoa, like this is kind of a different athlete in this offense we haven't seen yet. That's bad luck that Brooks got hurt again and Brown got hurt. And they've had a lot of bad luck with J.C. Horn's injuries. Like they've had some bad luck. And at some point you think that's got to turn. But it also does kind of reinforce the point that they not only need to hit on talent, but they need to get this roster some depth as well if they want to be back in the hunt as a playoff team.
Yeah, I'd also be very curious to what Carolina Panthers fans think of this. But, you know, we said that we weren't really going to touch the front office and the coaching staff. And I don't think I'm touching it at all. You know, Canales isn't – Dan Morgan's not going anywhere as the general manager. Canales is not going anywhere as the head coach. Brad Idzik's the offensive coordinator, and he has followed Dave Canales for the last 3 seasons now. He was the assistant wide receivers coach for the Seattle Seahawks in 2022. When Canales got hired to be the offensive coordinator in Tampa, he got Idzik to come with him to be his quarterbacks coach in Tampa. And then, you know, when Canales gets hired as the head coach for the Panthers, now Idzik has been elevated. So each of them has just like climbed a step of the ladder, just one a little bit lower than the other. So I don't think that we're making a change at offensive coordinator. And then when it comes to defensive coordinator, it's Ejiro Evero. And Carolina's defense sucks this year. It's bad.
It's really bad.
It's one of the worst defenses in the NFL. But I don't think that's Evero's fault. There's not really much that he can work with here. And so I don't think there's any reason to like scapegoat him in any way, shape, or form. I mean, maybe he gets like a head coaching interview or something like that. But other than that, I don't really see how, unless Evero wants to leave, I don't see how on Carolina's side of things they would move on from him, because Evero was a good defensive coordinator when he was with the Denver Broncos. And he was a good defensive coordinator last year with the Carolina Panthers. I mean, Panthers defense last year was decent. It was pretty good. And from this year to last year, Shaq Thompson, Frankie Louvu, Jeremy Chin. I know Jeremy Chin was sort of like in and out, whatever. But Jeremy Chin, Brian Burns, like all of these guys not on the team anymore and hardly replaced. I mean, those two linebackers, them losing Shaq Thompson and Frankie Louvu and replacing them with Josie Jewell and Tevin Wallace, like that is a massive downgrade in the middle of your defense.
You lose a lot of speed in that scenario.
Fuller and Woods have struggled at safety. And Mike Jackson's been playing opposite J.C. Horn, but yeah, that's okay. I mean, you'd probably like better if you could get it there. And then on the defensive line, it's Jadeveon Clowney, who's basically the only saving grace that you have there. DJ Wannan's been okay at times, but we'll get to the guys that might be able to move on from. DJ Johnson, who they drafted in the 3rd round, I believe. Yeah, 3rd round in 2023, has not developed at all whatsoever. Yet Yetur Gross-Matos on the team last year as well, who, okay, he didn't develop into the guy that you wanted him to be, but still a depth rotational player that you're not exactly replacing him at all whatsoever. I mean, their defensive line this year is guys that are just non-impact players outside of Jadeveon Clowney. You've got no impact players in your front 7, and then J.C. Horn basically on an island there at corner with safeties that haven't really played that well behind him. So, to me, I don't think you're touching this coaching staff at all whatsoever. Evero is coached too well in Denver, and he coached too well last year for you to think that there's any reason why you would move on. I think it is simply you just got to get way better players on that defense side of the ball.
I'm with you. Listen, it is dangerous to fire people in years like this, where when you said it, Trevor, what do you want? At some point, you need players.
Yes.
You need players. And I think the Panthers have an understanding as an organization that because of what they were going into with this year as an organization, they knew they were going to allocate so many resources to the offense because they just were probably embarrassed by their offensive line. And they knew they were going to use some key picks on offense, get a wide receiver, get a running back, get a move tight end. That, like, somebody's going to suffer from that. And what suffered from it was their defense when you trade Brian Burns, when you lose Derek Brown right away. It's not like you were swimming with talent on that side of the ball to begin with. Mm-hmm. So Canales was hired and his staff was hired with the mission of getting this quarterback situation right and uplifting Bryce. And then everything under that, like, falls under that. So now they need to find a way to field a competitive defense. Like, there's no, hiding that. And that's going to take some really good drafting, I think, deeper into the draft. And it's going to take finding some depth signings, because you can't be the team that, hey, we lost a guy here or we lost a guy there, and now the whole thing fell out from under us. Yeah. So, but I agree with you. I don't look at the Panthers and go, hey, they got 3 wins. Like, they're not getting enough out of this roster. I look at the roster and I go, yeah, I'm not surprised.
3 wins.
I'm not surprised. Like, your win total was probably 5.5.
I think it was 5.5, and
which is the lowest in football, by the way. For those listening, there was like 4 teams with 5.5 win totals this year. That's as low as they set it this year.
It's really hard to do.
You're not going to be set at 2.5 wins as a win total.
Yeah, it's really hard to be 4.5 win total in the NFL.
Although the Giants and Raiders are testing that theory right now.
No, I'm saying projections.
I know, but they're giving it a run. They might only win 2 games each. I actually think the Raiders got one.
In actuality, we know that teams win less than 5 games all the time, but it's hard to predict that.
Right, exactly. Football, there's just too many, not even fluky natures of it, but how close things can be on a bounce or something going right.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm with you all the way. Give some continuity here, and you got to think their owner and David Tepper, he wants continuity. He doesn't want to be looked at as this madman. That's why he
signed Rule to like the monster deal
and gave him you can't say no offer,
and gave him full control, because he wanted that to be he
wanted a football guy.
Panther. Yeah.
He wanted the football guy that has like the janitor style keys, like the big ring with like 30 keys on it. He handed that to Matt Rule and said, every room is yours. You could do whatever you want. I just want you here for 7 years, and I don't want to have to worry about being embarrassing. And you know what? I'm not sitting here in hindsight and criticizing
hold on. He said all that, but Tepper still has a master key in his back pocket, and he gets whatever door.
No, it's electronic, dude. This is a multi-billionaire. It's
an
electronic.
RPG. He's blowing the door off. He's setting C4 on the locks or the pins.
When we did
and blowing it to smithereens.
When we did our Tepper research for the first time, which is probably the Panthers Fix Your Franchise, but maybe before that, I don't remember. I mean, he is an interesting cat at a minimum. The bulldozing of that rival house is up there with
unprecedented
territory.
It's unbelievable.
I would say.
So, all right, we getting into the roster?
Yeah, I think it's really time after we kind of pooped on its lawn, to be honest with you.
No, I don't think we did, but I think we set it up correctly. I hope I appropriately painted a decent picture for when I said, when I talked about the stats of hey, it's not good in Carolina right now, but you are going in the right direction. Right. There is so much more faith that this could be better for this staff and this regime than it was previously. And so you could also believe that this team could finish strong, get another win out here. We'll see. I mean, maybe Panthers fans don't want that because you want the better draft pick, but I'm just saying, I think that there's things to play for still on this team. So as we often do, we'll start this with a roster overview. We'll get into some team needs. We'll talk about how much cap space they have to spend. We'll talk about some cap targets, maybe some flexibility that they can have on their own roster, which we definitely need to talk about that with Carolina. And then we'll sort of take that free agency plan and get into a mock draft here with them. Key pieces on offense, okay? So once again, this does not mean that these are the only good players on the team, but these are the players that I think you are building around, certainly for the short-term future, if not long-term. Bryce Young, Chuba Hubbard, both offensive tackles, both guards, and Xavier Legette. And look, I would love to throw Jalen Coker in there because I know people are like, he's going to leave Jalen Coker off the list.
Good story so far.
I love Jalen Coker. Yeah. So I want to be very clear. He is a part of their plans. Absolutely. He's had a great season. We even saw this past week against the Cowboys, right? Jalen Coker's been awesome. Would I call him a key piece? Not yet. Not quite yet. And some people could go like, Jalen Coker's been more reliable than Xavier Legette. I'm not going to fight you on that. Xavier Legette was picked 32 overall. Jalen Coker was an undrafted free agent. There is something to draft capital spent to acquire you, which gives you a longer leash, or in the minds of the decision makers, makes you think a certain way about a player. So, again, I'm not sitting here cutting Jalen Coker from the team, but I would like to see it for one more year from him before I call him a key player that I know that they're not going to just move on from at the drop of a hat if he has a bad streak or something like that. So that's how I see the roster. Anybody else that you would throw in there?
No, I think you had it. I think the best way to explain what you're going through is the Panthers don't go into next year and go, Jalen Coker is locked into our top 3 wide receivers, no matter what.
And he may very well be.
And guess what?
Receiver for them.
He very well could be. And he is making it a point right now to show that. But you don't go in with that. You're not invested in him like that.
Mm-hmm.
You are expecting him now to make the roster, which is a pretty impressive jump for a guy that wasn't drafted. But I think that's your point. Like, you invested the pick that what you invested in Legette, you expect Legette to be a top 2 wide receiver for you next year. And that's why he's a foundational piece. So, and doesn't mean that a guy can't become something. It's just how you view it when you're putting all the puzzle pieces together of the team.
So that's what I have on offense. Defense.
Oh, this might be quick.
Clowney, J.C. Horn, Derek Brown.
Yeah. I have to look up Clowney's contract.
They have him for another year.
He did sign another year, and it's actually real money in a sense.
Yeah, they have him for another year.
That I was wondering at the time. I was like, is he going to be a mercenary deadline move? And now I get why they didn't do that. I would want Clowney on the team next year.
You would?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad they didn't just give him away like everybody was acting.
They don't have anyone else.
You need players.
You're rushing the passer if they get rid of Clowney. They're calling you up.
I'll put my hand in the dirt.
Hey, we need somebody 6'4", 240 to get after the passer.
Yeah.
With bend. Wait,
yeah, with bend. I can
bend
a little bit.
Okay.
I don't know if the bull rush is going to work, though, for me.
No, you got natural leverage. You got him.
I do have natural leverage. That's a good point.
Okay, so those are the only 3, though. I mean,
that's it.
Again, Tevin Wallace, I know that they would love for him to be a starting linebacker. Like, I know some people in the draft really like Tevin Wallace. Shout out Mike Renner. Mike Renner was one of them. He was like, dude, you got to watch Tevin Wallace. I watched him a little bit. I saw a little bit more of the drawbacks. Renner understood the potential of him, so Renner was a big fan of him, I know. But he wasn't alone. There were a lot of people that really liked Tevin Wallace. And to get him in the 3rd round, honestly, it's still a little bit rich for me. But I understand the potential. I understand where they got him. So you're hoping that he develops, but I can't say key piece yet. Safeties, like I talked about, those guys are kind of replaceable. Corners outside of J.C. Horn. You just drafted Shaw Smith-Wade. So, again, he's not going anywhere. But key piece, you could throw him in there, I guess, if you wanted to, if you really wanted more than 3. But the key pieces are those 3. It's Derek Brown, it's Jadeveon Clowney, and it's J.C. Horn. That's my thoughts.
Yeah, I'm with you. I had to look up. I had Wallace in the 5th. So that'll be interesting how that one plays. I knew he was going earlier, though, than where I had him.
Yeah, I didn't love him.
And I had him. He was my last 5th round grade for linebackers.
So now we can get into free agency. So free agency for this team is very interesting because if you just look at it at face value and you go over to 2025 effective cap space for NFL teams, right now, the Carolina Panthers have projected $16 million in effective cap space. Now, remember, effective cap space is the cap space that you would have after getting to a 53-man roster, depending on how many pending free agents you have, and also signing your draft class. So it is, again, they use the word effective cap space because if you don't plan for any of that stuff, well, then that's stupid because you'd have to budget for it anyways. So 16 mil in effective cap space. That's it. And when you look at Carolina, We talk about how much this team is kind of void of talent.
On one side of the ball, for sure, yeah.
On one side of the ball, for sure. But even just some key pieces on both sides of the ball. You go, okay, how do we only have 16 here? Well, it was some Matt Rule contracts, some Matt Rule players that are still kind of sitting around, which we can talk about in a second. And it's also spending a lot of money last year. You spent a lot of money on Jadeveon Clowney, spent a lot of money on Damian Lewis, you spent a lot of money on Robert Hunt.
$100 million man.
Those are the three that you have a lot of money invested in. And when it comes to cap hits for next year, Taylor Moton, their right tackle, is $31 million on the cap right now. If you did nothing, they don't do anything, which you're going to do something, I'll explain. $31 million on the cap. Robert Hunt's $21 million. Derek Brown's $19 million. Damian Lewis $14 million. Jadeveon Clowney's $14 million. That is a shit ton of money in 5 players. That is a lot of money in just 5 players, especially when one of them's not a quarterback.
Yeah.
So
you got to rework those babies right there.
So they're pretty thick there.
Yeah.
Now, if you restructure these contracts, which I will say, there's a couple of ways that you can go about it. I was talking with Mike Kay a little bit about this. Mike Kay does a great job covering the Carolina Panthers for the Charlotte Observer. He follows the team very, very closely. And I was sort of asking him about this situation. And I was like, okay, well, is it a situation where they can restructure these deals because they can? And Mike is more on the side of he thinks they're sort of going to eat some of their vegetables with some of these deals and sort of let them play out as opposed to restructure them. Because when you restructure them, you turn those void years into actual contract years. So he thinks that for some of these players, they're going to kind of bite the bullet a little bit with the contracts that they gave him. But just to let you guys know, it's $16 million in effective cap space right now. They save $12 million if they restructure Taylor Moton, or they could just extend him, right? They could, so that you got some flexibility of what you could do with Moton's money. He's not going to be $31 million on the cap next year. It's just a matter of how they want to do it. Do they want to restructure the deal? Do they want to sign him to some sort of an extension? And okay, you can move the money around a little bit more, but it's at least $12 million that you save in a restructure. You can save $9 million if you restructure Derek Brown's. You can save $11 million if you restructure Robert Hunt's. You could save $6 million if you restructure Damian Lewis. In those 4 players right there, you have $38 million in potential cap savings if you restructure those deals. Now, it's going to, take picking up some void years and doing all that. And so you got to think about this long term. It's not just like a guarantee, but there's $38 million that you can make right there. You can cut Miles Sanders post June 1. You can save $6.7 million. And the fact that they drafted Jonathan Brooks, I know his injury kind of puts this up in the air a little bit, but certainly the fact that they paid Chuba Hubbard, they're going to move on from Miles Sanders. So they're going to save at least $6.7 million when you designate him as a post-June 1 cut. And they can cut DJ Wonnum at any time. They don't even need to designate him as a post-June 1. They can cut him at any time and they save $7 million. So there's about $14 more million right there. So all in all, that's even without a J.C. Horn contract extension, where you could get even more flexible with sort of how much money you're paying J.C. Horn, because Horn is, what is Horn on the cap next year? That's his 5th year. So he's $12 million on the cap next year, on the last year of his deal. So they will re-sign him at some point, and you can get even more flexible with that. All in all, if you were to do all of those names, you could get potentially around $65 million, in my opinion, in effective cap space. Now, talking with Mike, I don't think they're going to do that for all of them.
That's the max.
That's the max. So I think we could probably appropriately say this team could realistically have 45 to 50 mil in effective cap space with a couple of those restructures. How do you feel about that?
That sounds right. You don't want to totally kick the can down the road on everything, and then you're running into the same problem year after year after year until it's finally due. So I think you could do a little bit. You could have it both ways a little bit, right? Where, hey, we're going to free up some money because there's some moves we really want to make, but we're also going to be a little calculated and precise that it's like paying your credit card bill, right? Where we're going to pay some of our bill this year and be smart so we have flexibility for the future, because we want that potential flexibility in case other opportunities open up. So I think that checks out rather than saying, hey, the 65 to 70 full mil, hover around 40 to 45 mil, which is more than enough to take care of your business when you're structuring free agent contracts. You could either lower the cap hit early. Maybe there's a deal you want to front load a little bit. There's always an answer around this when you have somebody that understands how to manipulate or wisely work the cap over time.
So free agents for this team. So now that we're going into it thinking, hey, we're cutting DJ Wanham and we're moving on from Miles Sanders. So those guys, I think, are off the team. The other guys, I think it's more of a restructures. They're sticking around. That's fine. When it comes to true free agents for 2025, Austin Corbett, Andy Dalton, Shaq Thompson, Brady Christensen, Tommy Tremble, Mike Jackson, Jordan Fuller, Eddie Pinheiro. From talking with Mike, it seems as though Thompson, Tremble, Pinheiro, I think those guys are probably gone. I love Shaq Thompson. I mean, he's a Carolina Panthers legend, but him coming off an Achilles tear,
it's tough.
It's tough. I just don't think he's going to be back next year. So that's a tough one. I understand. Austin Corbett, who is the starting center for this team, he injured his knee 2 years ago, and then he tore his biceps this year. So now you've got a guy who has had season-ending injuries over the last 2 seasons. I don't think you re-sign a player like that. So I don't think Austin Corbett's going to be back. Basically, the only ones that I think that they're going to re-sign are Christensen, Brady Christensen, who I think could be a swing offensive lineman for you. I think he could play guard or tackle. And Mike Jackson, who's been a starting outside corner for you. You're not exactly in the business of just like letting even serviceable corners walk. So I think those two are re-signed. Maybe Dalton. I don't know. I mean, like, I have no idea really how they feel about that situation. I mean, Dalton's a great serviceable backup. I mean, if his family and if he loves living in Carolina and in Charlotte, sure, maybe. But it would have to be a pretty favorable situation in which Andy would be like, yeah, just throw me a couple mil. I'll be the backup. I love it here in Charlotte. I'll stick around.
I can see that. It seems like they have the right quarterback room in terms of, the personalities and stuff. You don't have somebody that's just breathing down Bryce's back and trying to take the job. And
right.
It feels like the right mentor and veteran voice in the room.
Yeah. Going back and make sure I didn't. Oh, Nick Scott as well. I think could be gone. I'm just kind of looking at the list here. Like he's a free agent that's up, and I think he could be gone. But all in all, you're not really breaking the bank. Like re-signing Christensen, re-signing Mike Jack, re-signing Dalton even.
Yeah, these are.
What are we allocating? Like 10-ish mil?
At
10,
max.
12 mil?
Max. Yeah.
To re-sign those guys. So we're probably operating around like 30, 40 million.
Yeah.
Or sorry, 35 to 40 million if we're going into like true free agency.
In actual money to spend.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you agree with that, then let's talk about team needs for them. I'll let you sort of talk about and sort of spearhead the team needs. And remember, we moved on from, in this plan, we moved on from Miles Sanders. We think they're going to move on from DJ Wanham as well. You're maybe bringing back a couple of the lower tier guys. Mike Jack can start for you at outside corner if you want, but what do you think of the big team needs for this team going into free agency and then in the draft as well?
I just think they need key help up front. Like you want to say
defensive line
across the board. Because you should have Derek Brown back next year, but I think you need more pass rush. I think you need more beef up in the middle. I think you need to prioritize this defensive line just so you're not literally run over, right? That's my biggest problem when I look at the Panthers. Like it's just too easy for opposing offenses to not only execute, but more importantly, control the game, right? When you look at, teams right now are averaging 5 yards a carry against them right now. And they're just bottom of the league, basically, in every run defense category. And you need to be a more stout unit up front, which will come with health, but it'll also come with adding more talent. And I do think you need somebody opposite Clowney that has pure pass rush skills, right? Now, do you want to spend on that? Do you want to draft that? I think the answer is a little bit of both in this scenario. I was just lost my tab. Okay, my tab on over the cap. You're probably going to have to get some stopgap veterans to mesh with younger players. There isn't some franchise cornerstone ad I see here. That's
what I was going to ask you is like,
what's the answer?
If we're building out a plan here, Carolina currently has, I think, the 5th overall pick as we are recording this podcast, if I remember correctly.
Just had Tankathon open. Yes, they are 5th.
They have the 5th overall pick. Nothing's going to change with the Monday Night Football games tonight. Well, I suppose it could. If Vegas wins, then they drop all the way down to, wow. If Vegas wins tonight, they drop all the way down to 7.
It's crazy, the volatility from 1 through...
Because of their strength of schedule, though.
Oh,
wow.
okay.
I didn't realize this about the Giants either.
They have the highest strength of schedule.
Whoa. If the Giants win a game, they're going to drop... If the Giants or the Raiders win any game over the next 3 weeks, they will drop 6 spots in the draft order.
Well, you know what their biggest fear is, right?
Winning.
And how do they do that? 2 things. 1, Drew Lock gets healthy. 2, the Eagles sit everybody the last week of the season. Which now, of course, everybody could be playing for seeding at the end. We don't know that as we sit here today. But there's a world where the Giants beat the Eagles' backups and go from 1 to, what'd you say, 7?
If the Giants, let's say the Giants just like won this week. If the Giants won this week, they would have dropped from number 2 overall in the draft order to number 7. And that would be the same exact thing if Vegas loses or if Vegas wins on Monday Night Football.
Yeah, this thing's far from over. Far from over.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
It's crazy.
Yeah, so Carolina's picking number 5, but just going back to the sort of the team building thing. So if they're picking number 5, my question to you is, because, you know, if we're putting our Dan Morgan cap on, we got to come up with a plan. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think that front 7 is the major issue of this team, and you're not going to draft a linebacker at 7. So basically front 4. I'm basically saying that we're going to operate in free agency as if we are going to take the best trench player that we have on the board at number 5, if not trading down to do the same thing a little bit later.
I think that's fair. And then you can go in looking for players to supplement in your front rather than thinking you need to pay what they did for the offensive line and buy a defensive line in this draft. Like you can get complementary players. I think there are 2 names to me that I'm interested in for the Panthers that are so different from one another.
In the draft or in free agency?
In free agency.
All right.
I think if you sign these guys, you're still thinking about also drafting a front 7 player. The first one, very under the radar, Michael Hoyt on the Rams. He is 28 years old. He'll hit free agency. He's a role player for the Rams. He's playing a little under 60% of the snaps. He's a very unique player that he's 6'4", around like 300 plus pounds, and they play him all up and down and standing up. He can do a lot of unique things. That's just a guy that I think a team like this is kind of missing on their front. A fill holes kind of guy. We can play him a lot of different places. He's in our rotation. He's not ever going to have 12 sacks for us, but can you get us 6 sacks and be stout against the run? Like Michael Hoyt,
they do need the floor must be elevated.
That's the kind of player this is. Exactly, Trevor. Like you look at the run defense grade, 70.9 this year. You look at his pass rush grade, 63.3. He's a very average pass rusher, but he gives you a floor, I think, against the run while not being a 0 against the pass. And with his build, I think he could play different alignments for you. And this isn't a break the bank signing. This isn't. I'm not going out and giving a guy $40 million. Like that's not. I'm looking for value to raise the floor, like you just said.
Yeah, I don't mind that. Honestly,
So this is right, like a a guy that I think can raise the floor of this unit. And then I'm going to throw a dart on a veteran to play a rotational role, but also maybe help the first round pick that I'm taking, because I'd like a veteran presence for that guy besides Clowney. And that world, and this all depends on money, because I think these guys have had down years. They're getting older. Like, I'm looking at like the Khalil Macks of the world, right? It's getting towards the end here. Mack is an older player. He's not a star rusher anymore, but a guy that could still give you some pass rush snaps effectively, help a young guy along. And now you actually have a rotation where you have guys like Clowney and Hoyt that could play the run. And then maybe you have a guy like Mack that's not only helping with your edge pass rush, but helping a young player as well. And Derek Brown back in the middle.
I don't know if Khalil Mack would come to Carolina is my only thing.
But we said that about Clowney, right? Like,
yeah,
why Clowney go there?
But Clowney's from an hour away.
That's a good point.
He's from 45 minutes away. He's
$20 million also helps, but that's a good point.
Obviously,
that's a good point, though. No, it's true. Like, how are you going to spend the twilight of your career? Yeah. I think Khalil Mack is the name I used. You could do this with a couple different veteran edge rushers that have had down years. There's Khalil Mack. There's Matt Judon, Hassan Reddick, which would be a return. And these guys are not having, I want to make this clear, like, these guys are not having, you're getting them at a cost-effective price, and you only have a shot at them because they don't have a ton of suitors. This isn't like Myles Garrett hitting free agency.
I love the Mac idea. You know what we need to do? Let's go into Wikipedia and change Khalil Mack's hometown to
Charlotte.
Mooresville,
Mooresville,
North Carolina. You know, just so it's not, it's not too obvious, and it's still in the Charlotte area. And then then he's coming home, and then we get to force the narrative that he's coming home.
I think you're onto something. And we could make during the presentation, they can make the I'm coming home mashup video. But there's actually no, like, it's all CGI. Like, Khalil Mack never played in this town. No, you did. You just don't remember.
No, it's everyone else that's wrong. What do you think? Yeah. Wikipedia's wrong? Wikipedia's wrong. Two podcasters wouldn't completely sabotage this man's life story in order to get him on one football team.
In order to fix your franchise plan to work.
It would never happen. They'd make a Netflix documentary of us at that point.
So those are my two very, like, not sexy at all signings that I think make the Panthers a better defense.
So, I mean, I have sort of one not sexy signing. Mo Hurst's been beat up a good amount, and he hasn't played well this year, but he suffered an ankle injury at the beginning of the year. But, like, this past year is sort of an outlier with how he has played. I don't mind, like, Mo Hurst as an interior defensive lineman to really help you out there. So, like, for depth guys, like non-star guys, he's playing in Cleveland right now. He's a free agent. I'd see sort of how he's feeling and where his sort of health is at. But Mo Hurst is somebody that I looked at as like, all right, not going to break the bank. I like Hoyt though. That's a decent call out there. Somebody else who I think is a decent call out is Malcolm Kuntz. Okay. Who was really excited to watch Malcolm Kuntz play this year. He had an 81.3 PFF grade last season. Had an almost 80.0 pass rush grade last year. Was really nice as a pass rusher, especially during the second half of the season for the Raiders, and suffered an Achilles injury at the beginning of this season, so we didn't get to see him. And he's coming off an Achilles injury. Obviously, there's a lot that sort of goes into that, and so there's a little bit of risk involved there. But Kuntz on one side, Clowney on the other, especially for a defense that likes to be multiple and can do a lot of odd front stuff like Evero has done when it did his time with the Denver Broncos and certainly at times with the Carolina Panthers. I like that idea. I like that idea there for them of having like Kuntz on one side and Jadeveon Clowney on the other, because there's a lot of really good interior defensive linemen that you could draft in this upcoming draft. And I feel like you'd give yourself flexibility to say, all right, well, if we can get Mason Graham at number 5, great. If we can't get Mason Graham, we could probably get somebody in the second round who's able to fit that bill. Oh, no, wait. Oh, no, they do still have a second round pick. I was just thinking.
They do.
They don't have they didn't have their second round pick because they traded it as part of the Bryce Young trade to the Chicago Bears, but they actually do have a second-round pick because they traded back with the Los Angeles Rams when they moved up to go to get Braden Fish. So they do still have that second-round pick. So Malcolm Kuntz was somebody I thought of. Osa Odighizuwa, I think, could be a big, impactful player as well as an interior defensive lineman.
I'd like to add an IDL for sure off this
Not
list.
so sure he gets out of Dallas, but
I think they like him.
he was a name that I thought of there.
You got Jaron Reed.
Yeah, I haven't looked at Jaron Reed's grades or film.
He's just solid. But if he's still year.
Playing solid, then
he's been very solid in Seattle.
Okay, that's fine. I'm all for that. I had other two positions that I was a little bit more emphasized on. These are positions that I don't think they're going to draft high. And they're two positions that I think they really need to upgrade if they can. And I actually think it behooves them the most to go after it in free agency as opposed to the draft. Safety and wide receiver. Safety, there's a handful of guys that can really help this football team out, especially if you're not bringing Fuller back. Budda Baker's on the market.
Right.
He probably goes back to Arizona.
Maybe.
But at one point in time, he demanded a trade or wanted a trade. So I know he's feeling better. They'll talk contract. But Budda Baker, Justin Reed from the Chiefs, Trayvon Merrick from the Raiders, also a free agent. Basically, their only good secondary player. I think he could be pretty nice for the Carolina Panthers. Elijah Molden is also a free agent from the Los Angeles Chargers. Talanoa Hufanga, if they get Hufanga, yeah. I would be all in on that. And we're looking at a Niners situation. You can say to yourself, Niners would never let Talanoa Hufanga go. One, he's been through injuries. Two, they're about to make a decision with Brock Purdy. They're already on the books for a lot of their players, right?
They got money situation brewing there.
So there's a chance that Talanoa Hufanga could absolutely hit the market. And if you could get him, that might be. Honestly, Talanoa Hufanga might be my number one free agent target for the Carolina Panthers.
I like that a lot. It's a name we have not mentioned on this show.
If you can get him, that is a high-impact player. Not only can he make an impact from the strong safety and just safety level, but he can mitigate what you lost from the 2023 defense with Shaq Thompson and Frankie Louvu now elsewhere. He mitigates a lot of that because of what he is as an enforcer over the middle at the second level as a strong safety type. So I love the idea of them getting Talanoa Hufanga, and then if you want to stick with Xavier Woods, he could be your more free safety type. That's fine. You've got him under contract. Then we get to wide receiver. That was the other position. Safety and wide receiver, I think, are the big ones that they should hit. Or maybe I should say this. They should swing for the fences with safety and wide receiver and free agency because I still love your idea of getting some depth pieces on the defensive line. Yeah. I just think that might be more of a draft need for them given who is available. At wide receiver, as much as it pains me to say this, Dave Canales knows Chris Godwin pretty damn well.
Damn, he's doing it.
So Chris Godwin has to be very high on their board. T. Higgins is the obvious one. He becomes the wide receiver one in this room immediately. I think Marquise Brown is an interesting type of an ad that they could have to be a deep threat type of a player that they thought they were adding in Deontay Johnson, but that obviously did not work out well for them. And then another one, a little bit of a wild card here. Cooper Kupp.
Wow.
That is my wild card. And you can say, like, hey, they got Adam Thielen, and you're right. Obviously, like, if they still have Adam Thielen, maybe they think that would be redundant. But if they don't still have Adam Thielen for whatever reason, or if they think that Adam Thielen is really taking a step back and they don't believe the same could be said for Cooper Kupp, I wonder if they could get him for, like, a mid-round pick, to be honest with you. Now, I don't know if the Rams would do that, but with him potentially being on the trade block earlier this year before the deadline, he's going to be a little bit older of a prospect, player, should say. That's my kind of out there, outside the box scenario of a wide receiver for them to go after.
I like it a lot. I'm a huge fan of the Chris Godwin idea because Godwin, even coming off the big injury, it'll be his age 29 season. I think his play style would be such a great addition for Bryce Young.
1,000%.
Like a player that Bryce can lean on with timing and rhythm and make plays for you at every layer of the field, especially over the middle of the field. Like you said, there's already a relationship there with Canales.
Right.
I think that's the home run scenario.
If Chris Godwin goes anywhere, I really wonder if it's Carolina.
For a lot of money.
Here's the thing that I will say. Tampa is going to give Chris Godwin a very competitive offer.
Of course, they love him.
They are not in the world where they're just moving on from Chris Godwin.
No, you gotta like really blow them out of the water with something crazy.
But if you are getting like genuinely like close to 30 mil a year for Chris Godwin, 28, 29, something like that, that might be more than Tampa can afford. And that might be a situation where you could get him to come over and be your wide receiver one.
And I think I'd rather, to piggyback off of another good idea you brought up in Cooper Kupp, I'd rather overpay Godwin at 29 than send assets and take on a lot of money for a 32-year-old Cooper Kupp. But obviously the world doesn't work that way. Like obviously there's a chance you don't have a shot at Godwin. But if I was just ordering what I would do, like Godwin would be the 1A by a good margin.
T. Higgins went to school at Clemson. Just shouting that out. But he's not from Carolina. I just had to look this up. Oak Ridge, Tennessee, which is actually outside of Knoxville, I think.
T. Higgins' hometown in his Wikipedia will be whoever gives him $37 million a year.
He's not getting 37.
I'm just kidding. I know.
What?
I know. Do you think the Patriots offer that, though?
47. What?
Do you think the Patriots offer that? Open market T. Higgins, what does he get? What's the over-under set at by Vegas? Let's pull up the receiver contracts, which is the adult way of doing this, I guess.
I mean, this is with just no numbers in front of me. I would think the over-under. I would think the over-under would be like 20. No. 26.5.
Starts with a 3.
Oh, you think it's for sure starting with a 3?
To put it in perspective.
Hold on. Yeah. Whoa, hold on.
This is open free agency.
Didn't Jefferson sign for 35?
35.
Okay.
CD 34, AJ Brown 32, Amon-Ra a little over 30, Ayuk 30 flat, Tyreek Hill 30 flat. This is open market free agency. All of those
receivers, though.
He's not at all. I agree. I'm not saying I would do this. I want to make this really clear. I'm saying, what is the over-under?
You're saying
if T. Higgins
you power move everybody,
walks out of Cincinnati,
you Mets fan,
that's what we do.
You Steve
Juan
Cohen
Soto,
believer.
15 years. We get what we want.
I'll give him $57 million a year.
I'm looking at the stats. I've looked at the stats. Hell, I'm looking at the stats right now.
Strictly based off film, I'm giving T. Higgins $57.5 million a year.
I think I'd set the over-under at 30.5.
I'm going to text Brad Spielberg the second that this podcast is over, and I'm going to say, is Connor high as a kite on a summer breezy day?
Make it clear. Open free agency. The Bengals do not tag him, nothing. They're just like,
any benefit.
Go see what you can get out there in the open market. I think the Patriots would offer him 30. I said 30.5 is my over-under, so I'm going to go with like that would be what the offer would be from an open market team.
I think realistically,
I don't think they're alone, by the way, New England.
Right. I think realistically we've tried to give T. Higgins to a lot of teams, obviously, when we've done this fixture franchise, but I really do feel as though the Patriots or the Panthers feel like the team that's going to offer him the most money. Now, it might not be the Panthers, depending again on how they deal with their restructured contracts of all of those guys, because that's going to that will set basically how much they're going to spend here. But
you know why I'm not insane?
I'm not insane.
I'm not owned. A 29-year-old Calvin Ridley a year ago.
Yeah.
A year ago. Think of inflation in the NFL. A 29-year-old Calvin Ridley got 23.
23 is not even close to the same conversation.
T. Higgins is 26. Open market. I think the over-under is set at 30.5.
No, I say 27.
Maybe I am insane.
27.
I don't know.
That's what I say. I say 27.5.
All right.
And, if this played out in real life, you'd get the good wide receiver, and I'd be like, well, we had a good process. And we'd be dog shit.
That's what sucks about free agency. There is no consolation for second, third, fourth, fifth. You just sit there and go, well, we didn't get the player.
I can't remember. I can't remember who this was. Who was it? When I was covering the Bucs, there was a player who was a free agent. And I knew that the Buccaneers were interested in it. And it was one of those situations where the Bucks like had a competitive offer into this player. And then some other team came. I'll try to remember this player if I can remember it and let you guys know on another podcast. And then some other team, I cannot remember who it was, basically came in and just went insane, like 135% over like market value. And it was basically a situation where it was like, are we talking about the same guy?
Yep.
Like, are you like, you just offered him that much money. He obviously took it. And it's like, you negotiate that correctly. Like I genuinely
and someone
think
earns it.
Tampa had negotiated it correctly with this player, giving him a good amount of money that was good for the team, but also good for the player. And then another team came in and was like, yeah, actually, we'll give you $5 million a year over whatever that number was. And it's like, what are we doing here? And that team gets that player, and the other team has to go, well, we handled that correctly, and tough shit.
You get the player. The Jets did that with C.J. Mosley.
Oh, that was with Mosley?
C.J. Mosley in 2019 signed a 5-year, $85 million deal as an off-ball linebacker.
That deal was insane.
I mean, that's half a decade ago.
Insane, brother.
They were in another stratosphere to get the player. Stratosphere.
It's a bad place to be.
It's when you got to be.
Never want to negotiate from that.
You basically lose every time. In football, I don't think you do in baseball because I think contracts are. You can lose, but they age differently, and there's no hard cap at all, which is the whole gigantic reason. Like, you either got money or you don't.
Right.
In football, you're pretty much all on the same playing field for the most part.
And there are so few scenarios where that makes sense. And I think that's the really important part of having very solid pyramid of power on your organization, to where you have to be able to check one another. The head coach has to be able to check the GM. The GM's got to be able to check the head coach. The owner's got to be able to check the GM, because you can't have somebody drunk with power be like, nope, I'm sipping our Kool-Aid. I believe we're one player away. And then you do something massively stupid and you go, oh, it turns out we were 5 players away. And now we just have a lot of money dumped into one player, and it doesn't really help us because it's not a quarterback. So there's just not nearly as many situations as fans or teams even would say, like, oh, yeah, we're one player away. Are you? I don't know. Okay, so to put all this with a bow before we get to the 3-round mock draft, we've moved on from Miles Sanders. We've moved on from DJ Wonnum. The rest of the team is relatively the same here. I say we put Talanoa Hufanga on this team, and I say that we put one of Chris Godwin or T. Higgins on this team.
Yeah, Godwin,
so you can operate with a wide receiver 1 on this team, on top of Xavier Legette, on top of Jalen Coker. And what's Adam Thielen's contract, actually? Probably a good thing to look up.
Yeah, I don't know.
Let's see. Oh, well, he has like uncuttable money, so that's not great.
So Adam Thielen is on this team next year, in theory.
Oh, I mean, no. He had uncuttable money for this season.
But it's still kind of stupid to cut him. Like, you're going to save $3.4 million, but carry a $5 million cap hit for a guy that is effective with your quarterback?
Yeah, if you post June 1 you save the same amount of money that you save with Miles Sanders. So you save 6.7 if you designate him to post June 1, which you can do because you don't have to do it with DJ Wonnum. So maybe, but ultimately, like you said, like, I'm not exactly in the business of saying like, hey, like, let's take weapons away from Bryce Young. I'm not really in that business. So if you're comfortable with him and you like him, we can keep him there. And then we're adding another wide receiver 2 or 1, I guess you could say, like a Chris Godwin, a T. Higgins, a Marquise Brown, a trading for a Cooper Kupp, whatever it is. Like, I think that they should go after somebody this offseason. Much like obviously they already tried to with Deontay Johnson, it just didn't work out for them. I think that you do the same sort of thing at a heightened level this upcoming year. So you got a safety, you've got a wide receiver 1 or a wide receiver 2, and then if that's the case, you're probably just settling for like a Michael Hoyt or something along the defensive line. Somebody new along the defensive line.
Don't talk about him like that. Someone like a Michael Hoyt. Like, you went to the dollar menu at McDonald's. That's what you talked about him.
Hey, brother. Double stack fish fillet.
Dude, back in high school, that gets you through. College, tough times.
I'm going to ask you a question here.
Because no one's listening.
This is going to determine our friendship moving forward. Did you ever, just got to make sure, take a chicken sandwich and a double stack from McDonald's and a double cheeseburger from McDonald's, take away one of the buns and put it together?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. You're still invited to the wedding.
Absolutely. Thank God. I'm really looking forward to it. So
on the line.
I would
I'll
really
probably do that at my wedding, to be honest with you.
That's a legendary, end of wedding midnight snack idea that maybe only the bros would really appreciate, but man.
Oh,
I don't know. I was going to say
slam that.
Yeah, this isn't like a only men thing. I just wonder if imagine your elderly grandmother hungry on the way out and you hand her a McChicken and a McDouble. Here you go, Grandma. hope you're bulking. Oh man.
Here goes Grams. It'll soak up the tequila.
That's good.
Nah, just kidding. She's already hammered. All right, so
she's been asleep for 3 hours.
That's what we got for that team going into the mock draft format. You ready to go?
Yeah, let's do this.
Let's do it. Pulling up the beautiful mock draft simulator. You guys can get the fully unlocked mock draft simulator over at pff.com. You can unlock all 7 rounds. Carolina's got 2 4th-round picks. No, I'm looking at it. Do we extend it out?
Yes, let's do the 4th. Yes.
All right. We're doing. All right, I'm about to start the mock. Swear to God, if one of these 4 teams takes Mason Graham, I'll start over.
There it is, the dagger. A good pick, though, from New England. It's not the end of the world.
I hate it because it's realistic.
Right. This is life when
New
you're
England
picking a
could
fit.
go Mason Graham. All right. What are we doing?
I think we are taking Abdul Carter. Right?
Yeah. So, all right. So
I'll tell you what. Go ahead.
People listening on audio are like, what the hell just happened? So Mason Graham went through overall to the New England Patriots. So he's not on the board anymore. And if you want to say it's not realistic that the Patriots would take him, I do think that there is a reality where if you are picking number 5 overall in the draft, Mason Graham is gone. Whatever the order of the teams are going to be when it's all said and done, Mason Graham is one of the best 3 players in this class. And so it is more of a risk, in my opinion, to have him in number 5. Now, you could say to yourself, well, the New York Giants and the Las Vegas Raiders are going to take quarterback, and they didn't take quarterback in this situation. But I don't know how quarterback's going to play out. So I don't think that's as much of a guarantee as we think that it might be.
Yeah, I guess
1 and 2.
The argument is, and it still keeps this realistic, is that say Shedeur goes to the Giants at 1 and Cam Ward goes to the Raiders at 2, or flip them, who cares? And say the Patriots take Travis Hunter, Jacksonville could still take Mason Graham. So it's not you're sitting here and going, well, actually, when the quarterback, so
he could be off the board at 5.
It sucks for us because he would have been a sick pick here. But hey, this is part of drafting.
Yeah, he would have been an idea.
You don't always get what you want.
Ain't that the truth, brother?
Carter. Where do you stand on Jalen Walker, his draft ceiling?
I like Jalen Walker. I think he'd be a top 15 pick in this draft.
Yeah, I'm not taking him here, but I think he's gonna go real early. I really do.
Yeah, I think he's going top 15.
Yeah, I think
if Tyree.
Yeah, Wilson, I think earlier.
If Tyree Wilson could go top 15.
Yeah, he's a better prospect.
Yes, he is more impactful at what he does.
That's a very good way of putting it.
He's also better than Lucas Van Ness. Where did Van Ness go?
Very early. I think 12th.
Yeah, he's better. He's better than Van Ness.
Because they flipped with the Jets that year. They didn't make their 13th. Yep.
Yeah, so you can easily talk about Jalen Walker going in the top 10, in my opinion.
In a not insane draft, this draft doesn't have insane blue chip talent everywhere. I thought last year's was better at the top.
So I think Abdul Carter's the pick.
I think so too. Go ahead.
I was going to say, Will Johnson gives you a pretty sick cornerback duo.
He does.
Also, depending on how you feel about J.C. Horn, right, with the injuries that he has had over the last 3 years.
Pending free agent.
If you think you are more likely than not to move on from him, then you probably consider this with Will Johnson. But I think he does have to be edge rusher. Abdul Carter on one side, Jadeveon Clowney on the other. You got some good guys in the middle. Obviously, Derek Brown's coming back. You'll add Michael Hoyt. You'll have Ashawn Robinson. He's still on the team. Shai Tuttle, I think, is still on the team. Just you've got your deeper interior rotation, but I like edge rusher here still. I think Abdul Carter is an absolute demon on the edge. He's been fantastic basically since the first game. Look at this. So I'm showing this on the screen for everybody who's watching on YouTube. So 3 of his lowest graded games, not quite, but 3 of the lower tiered games. The first one is the very first game that he was a full-time edge against West Virginia. And in that game, he was going up against Wyatt Milam on some reps, not all of them, but
he was a good player.
Very good player. Basically, since then, he's been a monster. He's got 4 games where he's graded over an 84.1, and that's not just as a pass rusher. On true pass sets, he has a 92.5 pass rush grade and a 21.3 pass rush win percentage. He's a beast.
He's a beast. He got a Johnny Cornelius.
Oh, did he?
Pretty
defensive end?
A little bit, yeah. Like there was some wins there where the thing is, a Carter, he is so explosive, and he's starting to round out his moves. That's what you look for in an NFL guy. He's not just high effort, getting sacks off of a twist or a stunt. There is special raw ability there. And hey, we had this conversation about a certain Penn State pass rusher this time last year, who I think wasn't as good of a prospect as Carter is. Mm-hmm. Chop Robinson's playing good football right now for Miami.
Yep.
Playing really good football.
He is.
So you want to draft special traits at edge, even if you believe they're a little raw. And you made the perfect point, Trevor, that Carter's on a trajectory where he's gotten better month after month this season.
You know what's funny?
Please
So
tell.
when you said he's got Johnny Cornelius, I thought you were talking about a college football award. That's why I said, best defensive end, because I thought you were talking about like the Johnny Cornelius award. Brother, I can't keep up with all the names. I can't keep up with all these awards.
No, the awards are ridiculous.
All these names from
ridiculous.
like the 60s.
Yeah, he got
these people.
He got the Johnny Cornelius best pass rusher award.
I thought you said he's got the Johnny Cornelius.
The Johnny Cornelius Good Guy Award. Best guy with the media all year. Most charity work. The Johnny Cornelius Award. Not that he had a couple good reps against a Johnny Cornelius, the tackle for Oregon in the Big Ten championship.
I thought you said
that's amazing.
The Johnny Cornelius.
That is amazing.
All right, so we're picking the Johnny Cornelius Award winner, Abdul Carter.
Yes,
here, number 5.
Congrats to Abdul Carter. Nice job with the community.
Just an incredible job. Got them at number 53 now. Let's see. Got some wide receivers on the board. Savion Williams still on the board. Xavier Restrepo. Ooh, Kamari Ramsey. Jaden Higgins. Mason Taylor, Gunnar Helm, Jack Bash. Wide receiver.
A lot of talent. Man. A lot of talent.
Xavier Watts. Oh, baby. Watts and Talanoa Hufanga.
Yeah, that's a nice. They complement each other well.
Kind of nasty. Oh, Chris Paul, though. I do like Chris Paul a lot.
I haven't caught up on linebackers yet.
He is just really good to me. He understands his position so well. I know we're looking at it now on the screen. The Florida game's a stinker. He had a 44.9 grade, and I understand that his highest graded games came at the beginning of the season where they weren't playing really great opponents, but pretty good grade against LSU, pretty good grades against Oklahoma, Arkansas, Georgia, and Mississippi State to end the season in that rivalry game. 85.5 run defense grade, 85.9 coverage grade. I like Chris Paul, man. I would genuinely think about him here because
they need linebacker.
Yeah, I don't love taking linebacker here because Panthers have a lot of needs, but linebacker's one of them.
I know. I'm torn because I really like Jack Besh or Jaden Higgins here too.
That would make it some wide receiver one again, like T. Higgins, Chris Godwin, Marquise Brown.
That's fair. if you feel good about getting one of those guys and you like Leggett, who's getting wrist surgery,
and you got Coker,
and we're not 100% cutting Thielen, but we could post-June cut Thielen. Yeah, you're right. We could probably wait on wide receiver in that scenario a little bit.
I'm going to wait on wide receiver, and I'm actually going to throw another name at you. Alfred Collins.
Yeah.
Dude,
they need help in the interior.
Look at this, man.
That's what you love about Alfred Collins.
Monster in the run.
Yep. They always have that kind of two-gapping, hold the fort, contain.
You know what? I really wanted Mason Graham. Obviously, still would at 5. I actually like this scenario a lot better of Abdul Carter at 5 and then Alfred Collins at 53, as opposed to Mason Graham at 5. And look at all the edge rushers that have gone.
Right, that's the thing. You got to get one, and you didn't just get one. You got a hell of a player.
Ezraku's gone. Kyle Kennard's gone. JT Tuimoloau is gone. Mike Green is gone. Jack Sawyer is gone. Omar Norman Lott is gone. Princely Iman Mielen is gone. TJ Sanders, Landon Jackson, all these dudes are off the board. And I don't know if it's going to be that quite that much of a run, but I think you got a better chance of picking Alfred Collins at 53. So I like this idea.
I like Alfred Collins here a lot. Now that it all kind of comes together.
All right, let's do it.
Yeah.
Frid.
And now the front just looks so much more like an NFL team compared to what they've dealt with this year.
Okay, yeah, they still do have the 3rd round pick. Damn, Watts is still here? That's sick. I don't know if Watts would still be here. I guess 69.
It's not insane.
That's not crazy.
It's not.
Let's see. Who else we got? Kevin Winston Jr. is here from Penn State, another safety.
Winston's going to go back, right?
I think he would have to. Yeah. I haven't seen anything official from him, but one would think, why would you come out after? Because he's a true junior. So
right.
Why would you come out after this season?
He did declare. Wow.
Like I said all along, Kevin Winston Jr. great
had to
prospect,
come out.
Just had to come out. You got to capitalize on it. I actually don't love that decision.
No. So Schefter is calling it a partially torn ACL.
For who?
Winston.
Oh.
So he's expected to be able to do drills at the combine.
Okay.
He was my favorite safety over summer, but now I feel like I'm playing more roulette. I loved this player over summer. I thought he was the best, and that's counting Malachi, who is also a phenomenal safety in this draft.
Yeah.
But when I watched him and Malachi Starks from Georgia, I was like, oh, wow, this is going to be a really good safety class. All right, so Kevin Winston Jr., we've said it all along. He had to declare. This was the time to strike.
Yep. So we have, obviously, he's on the board. Maxwell Hairston, the corner from Kentucky. If you wanted a young, aggressive Kentucky player.
Yep.
Jeffrey Brasa, who we've talked about, the linebacker from Oregon, who is sort of that hybrid, safety linebacker type of a player. Just solid grades throughout this season.
What do we look?
Marcus
Yeah.
I would only, let's see, 6'5", 300. I don't think you would need him.
No.
Tez Johnson would be fun.
Up, Airtime International, Trey Harris.
Airtime International, Trey Harris is still here. I think this is realistic. I think him being available at 69 is actually realistic. Nick Eamon-Wari, but...
And playing him at linebacker? Is that what
but you already have that in Tevin Wallace.
Right, yeah. I don't want to go down that road again.
I wouldn't need that. Did you see Parker Brailsford went back, too?
I did, which is good because he can get bigger and stronger. And
Logan Jones also went back. Did you see that?
No, I did not see that. That was looking like he was going to be my top center.
Center class is dire.
Decimated.
Dire.
Holy smokes. I missed the Logan Jones news.
Yeah.
I saw Brailsford. Wow. All right, well, cool.
I believe. At least that's what I was told.
Well, I believe you.
Well, you shouldn't.
Drew Aller went back today as we sit here and record. That I told somebody that asked about it. It was kind of the worst kept secret in the scouting community. Nobody expected Aller to come out. And the only reason people thought he would be to capitalize on a weak quarterback class. So
I would have.
He would have went in the top 10.
Gonna keep it a buck with you.
He would have went in the top 10. Hey,
you think he would have got on the top 10?
Mm-hmm.
All right, then I think it's absolutely foolish that he would go back to school.
Yeah, I think he would have went in the top 10. And they would have sat him for a year, whoever took him, but
No, they wouldn't have.
You're right, because everyone says that and they play him. The irresistible urge to play your guy you didn't want to have to play. Yeah, we're not falling for that anymore. Hey, he could change it. Hey, if they have a hot playoff, maybe he says, screw it, I changed my mind.
Man, who do we go for here? We got two defensive linemen.
We've been on this pick for a long time.
I know.
The draft is, everybody's freaking out.
I mean,
the clock's been at 0 forever. We got to go back to linebacker, right? And see what's there. Not that I have high expectations.
I would like a linebacker.
Oh, man.
Bross is basically the only one.
Yeah, this isn't.
I don't hate this.
No.
I like Jeffrey Bross.
He's a good player.
I think he's good.
I could be talked into this.
We're picking at 69 right now, and then we've got 106 and 115. So let's sort of think about the positions that we would want to attack.
Well,
Safety.
Can we take Winston, or we think he's not going to be there?
No, he's not going to be there at 106. No.
It's 69. Maybe because of the medical? He has borderline round 1 tape from 2023.
Yeah, but 2 years ago now.
But he has a partially torn ACL and missed the season. So I don't think he'll go in the top 50.
I think he's probably a second rounder. I think if we wanted to pick Kevin Winston Jr., we probably would have had to pick him at 53.
I think that's fair.
But I don't know. I really don't know. Because safeties always go kind of late, it feels like.
They really do. It's kind of nuts.
I'm looking up the 2024 draft from last year. Hold on, let me let's see. Where's safety? Safeties. Tyler Newman was the first safety off the board at 47. Javon Bullard went 58. Cole Bishop 60. Kalen Bullock 78.
That's where they tend to go.
I think we could get away with it with Winston.
It's not unreasonable right now because he's not medically cleared yet.
How do
obviously.
you feel about like Lathan Ransom or Xavier Watts? Because if you feel good about any of them, then we can just say, all right, we're going to take a safety here.
Watts' range is awesome to me. And if you want to make a pro signing and then you pair Watts with that player, like Watts has a lot of range. As you see his snaps right there, he's played everywhere. I don't dislike Lathan Ransom, by the way.
I'm going to see how realistic this is. Hold on. Oh, this is just DBs. We don't have safeties. Okay, that's dumb. All right, so Tyler Newman was the first one last year. Let's see. Where's first safety? Brian Branch, I think, was the first safety the previous season, or the previous draft in 2023 at 45. Then Jatavian Martin was 47. DJ Turner was 60, but those guys were kind of like hybrid corners as well. Sidney Brown was 66. Yeah, this is sort of the range. Marte Mapu was 76. 2022. Kyle Hamilton went 14. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, obviously that was a lot higher. Lewis Seen went 32. Yikes.
That was a brutal one.
Jalen Petrie, 37. Jaquan Brisker's 48. No, I think the safeties could go higher in this draft.
Okay.
We're all just, I don't know why we're having this conversation, honestly. People are like, just make the fucking pick, morons. I think we go Jeffrey Brasa. Let's go linebacker.
Okay. We got there.
All right, so we're going linebacker option there. 106, wide receiver. We're looking at wide receiver.
Yeah, let's see if we can get some value here.
All right, Kobe Hudson, Pat Bryant. Pat Bryant.
Pat Bryant's a nice fit. Get a physical wide receiver.
Yeah, don't hate that.
I don't hate it at all. I think that's the move.
Okay, could go Pat Bryant. What about tight end? We got a tight end left. Because remember, it's basically just Jatavian Sanders if Tommy Tremble's out of there.
Right.
But Jackson Hawes, I do like. We don't have to pick him right now, but again, like that's the
good name to keep in mind. T. Ferg.
T. Ferg.
I like T. Ferg.
Could get T. Ferg at
Oregon tight end Terrence Ferguson, for everybody just joining us and not living and dying with the NFL draft since May, like us very sick individuals.
Fergalicious. Best available. A lot of defensive guys, which kind of sets up well for it. Man, center. I wish we could pick a center. Jake Slaughter's been good from Florida. I haven't rewatched the centers in a while. He got first team All-American, so I wonder if
I got to go back and watch him then.
If he's going to be a priority day 3 type of a dude. So we've got edge rusher, we've got defensive tackle, we've got linebacker. All right, probably Pat Bryant here.
I think Pat Bryant's the value.
All right, Illinois wide receiver Pat Bryant gives you that X position.
Yes.
Put on the line of scrimmage. You can move Xavier Legette around if you want to. He doesn't just have to play attached to the line of scrimmage. And then, of course, depending on what wide receiver you sign, that gives you some pretty good depth. Like Pat Bryant is, to me, like a better version of basically what Jonathan Mingo was. Like Mingo was more athletic, but he was more inconsistent. And Pat Bryant is like, okay, I'm not as athletic as Jonathan Mingo, but I am the contested catch on the line of scrimmage type of receiver that you wanted.
Right. And no block for you, Pat Bryant, which you got to realize if you're trotting out some, you have some big wide receivers that can block. It's going to help the run game a lot for this team.
How do you feel about JJ Pegues?
This would be a nice way to set up the D-line. We've spent a lot of resources on the defensive line in this exercise, but
we need it.
But wait, that's the whole goal. So you're not going to hear me argue against it. A little bit of a different player than
I love the versatility, man.
Pegues I was going to say, he's different than what we got in Collins, which is why I like it.
Pegues can play D-end for you, big D-end. He can play defensive tackle. He's a really nice athlete. He even, moonlights as a wildcat quarterback, fullback type of a dude. Like, this is somebody that it's just a good football player I want on my team.
Yep. That'd be a fun one.
JJ Pegues it is. We're doing it. Look at this. We loaded up.
This is actually this. I think we'll hear good remarks for this draft.
Hey!
See? B+.
Mike. Come on, Mike.
Let's get after it, Mike.
Let's go, Mike. Get out of your seat.
Finally.
B+ from Mike McCarthy here. It's one of the highest grades Mike McCarthy's ever given us, grading the mock draft. As of course you guys know, Mike McCarthy, who was spent a little bit of time at PFF. He still does.
PFF intern.
PFF intern. He still grades all the mock draft simulator grades here for us. So we got a little B+ from Mike. So it's good to go. All right. So to wrap it all up, Carolina Panthers, not too much changing on the roster. You're getting a little bit flexible with some of the contracts you got. We're moving on from Miles Sanders, moving on from DJ Wanham. We're signing a big-time wide receiver. One of T. Higgins, Chris Godwin, Marquise Brown, maybe trading for Cooper Kupp, something like that. We're bringing in Talanoa Hufanga. We're moving on from Fuller, so he's going to be the starting strong safety for you. We've got Michael Hoyt, we're also adding to the interior defensive line. And then for the draft, it's Abdul Carter on one side. It's Jadeveon Clowney on the other. It's Alfred Collins in the middle, along with Derek Brown and JJ Pegues there as well, along with, again, Michael Hoyt is there. So we're totally retooling the rotation of the defensive line for the Panthers. Jeffrey Bassa is now at the linebacker spot as well with Tevin Wallace and Josie Jewell. Wide receiver Pat Bryant to really make that wide receiver group even deeper. And there we go. That is us fixing the Carolina Panthers. We would love to hear from you guys. Of course, we love doing these Fix Your Franchise series, and the reason why we do is because we get to hear from diehard Panthers fans and just fans of the teams that we do this series for. So the best way to do that, youtube.com/@NFL Stock Exchange. If you're audio only, you can hit us up on Twitter and Instagram as well, @Tampa Bay Trey, @Connor J. Rogers. Connor, anything else before we get out of here?
Really fun doing this series this year. I feel like it took a huge step forward. It's awesome how on board everybody got. The demands for their franchise, people listening to Fix Your Franchise, even if it's not a team that they root for, I think is the coolest part. It gives you a really good grasp of the bottom of the NFL, the lower half of the NFL. While everybody's talking about the playoffs and moving forward, we talk about the teams that are trying to get it right for next year. And I really enjoyed it, man.
I have too. Appreciate everybody and all the love, all the interaction, even if it wasn't love, all the interaction that we've had from Fix Your Franchise. We understand that not everybody's going to agree with our takes. We don't just do this podcast because we want everybody to agree with us. We're doing it because we love the conversations. It's a lot of fun. And the what if, the team building, like Connor said, is a ton of fun. So whether you're a fan of one of these teams or just wanting to get in the conversation, we love you guys. Thank you so much. This makes it so much fun for us to do. We are not done this week. The schedule's going to change a little bit, just to let everybody know. It's going to be a little bit flexible certainly with the holidays and with Christmas and with New Year's coming up, because we want to get into more early position rankings episode. We did wide receiver. In case you missed that, you can go back on the channel. We did that for last week. We're doing quarterback this week, but we are, as of right now, planning on recording that on a Friday. So it's going to be a little bit later. It's going to give us a little bit more time to watch a little bit more extra film. And as we move forward, since a lot of these podcasts that we're doing aren't necessarily timely to the Monday results, sometimes if we're doing a mock draft episode, we'll probably do it on a Monday, but we might even be switching when the first podcast episode is of the week to give us more time to watch some of this film, to make sure that these early rankings episodes are as thorough as they can be for us to give them to you. So just wanted to say that as the holiday season is approaching, the episodes might be a little mix and match of when they're coming out, but we promise we're going to give you guys as much as we possibly can over this next month. I'm Trevor Sikkema. That is Connor Rogers saying thank you guys so much for watching and listening to the NFL Stock Exchange podcast. We'll see you guys later this week.